Kana is a very strict girl with an incredibly dominant personality. She's one of the top employees in her department, so she's always helping everyone else out. That's why her boss, Kurokawa, asks her to train the new guy, a super kind and surprisingly polite employee. The problem is that Kana only looks strict on the outside. Deep down, she's constantly nervous and absolutely terrible at communicating with people. So while she's training Kamigawa, internally she's dying of embarrassment and doesn't even know if she's doing a good job. At the end of the day, she decides she needs to do better, so she starts by working on her communication skills. When she gets home, she starts reading books about it, and the next day she heads to work with one goal in mind, inviting him out to lunch. Unfortunately, she overthinks everything, and Kamigawa ends up buying food on his own, so she doesn't accomplish anything that day. One day, Kamigawa runs into her in the hallway while a group of girls are talking about how sorry they feel for the new guy. They say Kana is mean and always looks angry. That obviously hurts her feelings, but then Kamigawa tells them that he feels lucky because he's been able to see Kana's kind side. That turns her bright red, and she realizes what a great guy Kamigawa really is. So the next day, despite being incredibly nervous, she finally works up the courage to invite him out to lunch. That's when we learn that Kamigawa is always broke and survives on instant noodles because he spends all his money on toy robots. But Kana doesn't judge him for having a hobby, especially since she spends plenty of money on video games herself. Little by little, Kamigawa starts settling in. He barely asks Kana any questions anymore, which makes her wonder if she's become completely useless. Still, she assumes he's just too shy to ask for help, so she plans to invite him out to lunch again and make him feel more comfortable. Unfortunately, his coworkers beat her to it. He accepts their invitation but suggests bringing Kana along too. They immediately tell him that Kana prefers eating alone, so Kamigawa goes off to lunch with them, leaving poor Kana all by herself. At the end of the day, Kamigawa decides to stay late at work. Kana is about to head home, but then decides to stay and keep him company. The two end up working together, and later Kamigawa tells her that he knows she likes eating alone, assuming she forced herself to have lunch with him. Without even thinking, Kana blurts out that she wanted to eat with him, only to turn bright red right afterward. But Kamigawa is so clueless that he completely misses the hint, and before leaving, the guy even falls asleep. So Kana ends up covering him with her jacket, although it's obvious she's enjoying spending time with him more and more. At this point, it's safe to say we always see these two together. One day, their boss informs them that someone at the company is getting married. He assigns them the task of finding a good restaurant for the celebration and buying a gift. That same day, they get right to work while Kana focuses entirely on looking cool in front of Kamigawa. Unfortunately, she gets so nervous that she starts breaking things in a store. I have no idea what they ended up buying, but during the celebration, we finally meet the woman who's getting married. Kana is so focused on Kamigawa that she tastes the drinks first just to make sure they aren't poisoned. The others can't believe Kana showed up, but she drinks so much that she starts feeling sick. After the small party, the lovebirds head out together. However, Kana is a little dizzy, so they sit down and talk for a while. When Kana asks if he thinks she's a terrible person, Kamigawa tells her there's nothing terrible about her. He points out that she's always been kind to him, and we even see that she gave him advice right before his job interview. Kana gets so flustered that she walks away without saying a word, but Kamigawa uses the opportunity to invite her out for drinks sometime. She happily accepts. Back at work, Kana even gets jealous after noticing a lipstick mark on Kamigawa's shirt. But when he tells her that she's the one who left it there the night before, Kana completely loses it and demands that he throw the shirt away. Right then, their boss calls them in and tells them they need to travel somewhere together. It turns out that Natsuki, the company's model, has a magazine photo shoot coming up. Our two lovebirds are assigned to the team to help make sure everything goes smoothly. The important part comes when they arrive at the beach. Mako comments on Kana's figure and literally tries to touch her without permission. Thankfully, Kamigawa steps in and stops him. So after the guy leaves them alone, Kana thanks Kamigawa for saving her. From that moment on, Kamigawa starts feeling a strange pressure in his chest, and now he's the one turning red whenever she's nearby. The next day, the group finishes the photo shoot. Mako suggests exploring the city together, but Kana's social battery is completely drained. Kamigawa notices immediately, so he tells everyone that he and Kana have something they need to take care of. The two head to a cafe together and basically spend the afternoon acting like a happy couple. But when they return to the hotel for the night, they're informed that the company only reserved one room with 2 beds. While taking a shower, Kana admits that the situation is a little awkward, but she likes Kamigawa enough that she doesn't really mind. However, when she gets back to the room, Kamigawa is about to leave so she can relax without worrying about him. Trying to stop him, Kana tells him that something like this happened once before and that she had a lot of fun with the other person. What he doesn't know is that she's talking about her mentor, so he gets jealous and suddenly wants to leave even more. But Kana insists so much that they end up spending the entire night playing a racing game together. And just like that, the trip comes to an end. As soon as they get back, the weather forecast announces several days of heavy rain. So Kana decides to work twice as hard to make sure Kamigawa can leave earlier. Nobody else from their department shows up that day, meaning she'll be spending the whole day alone with him. Naturally, she's incredibly nervous, but that doesn't stop them from attending a work meeting together. Afterward, Kana tells him he's free to head home, but Saku from the sales department asks him to help with something. Meanwhile, Kana finishes another meeting and despite being exhausted, feels happy because she thinks Kamigawa already left early. To her surprise, he's still at the office. When he tells her that Saku asked for help, Kana immediately goes looking for him to give him a piece of her mind. Angrily, she tells Saku to stop taking advantage of the new employees and points out that Kamigawa should already be home. So the two of them head home together. Since Kana forgot her umbrella earlier that day, they're forced to share Kamigawa's umbrella. He's completely focused on making sure she doesn't get soaked, while Kana can only think about how close they are standing. After that, they take the train together. Before leaving, Kamigawa gives her his umbrella, and she sends him off with a beautiful smile. But when Kana finally gets home, she can't stop thinking about what a gentleman Kamigawa really is. Now Kana wants to take him out for drinks as a way of thanking him. That's when we meet Miho, another new employee at the company. For a moment, Kana gets a little jealous, but she tells herself it's a good thing that Kamigawa gets along with girls his own age. So when Ritsu and Minori try to join their outing, Kana immediately walks over and says she wants to come too. Most people find Kana intimidating, so the girls back off without much hesitation. Afterward, Kana admits that she doesn't want to go and tells them she hopes they have fun together. But it turns out Miho genuinely wants to get to know Kana, so she insists that she come to the festival with them. With no other choice, Kana accepts the invitation and heads out after work to buy herself a yukata. On the day of the festival, some of Miho's coworkers show up too, but I'm not even going to introduce them because they disappear almost immediately. Everyone spends time together during the festival, but seeing how well Kamigawa and Miho get along makes Kana feel incredibly sad. To clear her mind, she wanders off on her own and starts wondering if she might have feelings for Kamigawa. Unfortunately, one of her sandals breaks. Her phone is dead, so she ends up sitting by herself, reflecting on how she's always been alone and how it might already be too late to change that. Just then, Miho finally finds her. After talking with Kana for a while, Miho realizes that Kamigawa was right. He's always telling her that Kana is a genuinely kind person. A little later, Kamigawa shows up, shouting that he had been worried sick about her. Without wasting any time, he fixes her sandals so they can still go watch the fireworks. As they start heading over, Miho walks so fast that Kamigawa falls behind. That's when Kana grabs his hand and tells him to stay close. Once they arrive, Miho heads off to buy drinks, and Kana suddenly realizes that she's still holding her man's hand. The fireworks begin lighting up the night sky, and Kana can't help wondering whether she would be able to confess her feelings if they were the same age and if she weren't his mentor. At this point, it's becoming painfully obvious that they both like each other. One day, they run into each other at the supermarket. Kana is only there to buy junk food, and she's terrified that Kamigawa might find out she can't cook. While they're there, they spot a couple shopping together, and Kamigawa starts imagining what that would be like with Kana. In fact, he mentions that even though he cooks for himself, it'd be nice to have someone to cook with. So the next day, Kana shows up with cuts all over her fingers, making it pretty obvious that she tried cooking for the first time. More importantly, her mother calls and tells her that she's going to find her a boyfriend. Her mom is always teasing her about things like that, so Kana blurts out that she already has a boyfriend before hanging up. The problem is that Kamigawa overhears everything and is heartbroken to learn that she's supposedly dating someone. However, her mom calls back and says she stopped by for a visit and would love to meet Kana's boyfriend. The only problem is that Kana doesn't have one. Naturally, Kamigawa offers to help, and that night he comes over pretending to be her boyfriend. Her mother's name is Sakura, and as expected, the evening quickly turns into a collection of embarrassing stories about Kana. At one point, Sakura asks Kamigawa why he likes Kana, and Kana gets so embarrassed that she escapes to the bathroom. While she's gone, Kamigawa admits that Kana can be intimidating when she speaks so firmly. But he also says she's incredibly sweet and that he feels lucky to know that side of her. Of course, Kana ends up overhearing every word. At the end of the evening, Sakura thanks Kamigawa for playing along with Kana's little request. She figured out the relationship was fake because he's far too respectful when talking to her daughter. Still, she's happy that Kana managed to meet such a good man. Several days later, Kana goes shopping for clothes, but she's too nervous to deal with the store employees. By pure coincidence, Kamigawa shows up and offers to help her. So Kana spends the afternoon trying on different outfits before choosing her favorites. At the end, she happily thanks him for all his help. But then a girl suddenly appears and grabs Kamigawa by the arm. That immediately puts Kana in a terrible mood, something Miho notices right away. Sato, one of Kana's longtime friends, notices it too, even though she tries to deny it. They quickly realize everything revolves around Kamigawa, leaving Kana with no choice but to tell them the whole story. To help clear everyone's minds, Miho suggests a trip to a spa. Once they're there, Sato, who saw Kana and Kamigawa together the other day, starts messing with him. He tells Kamigawa that he likes Kana as more than just a friend. Meanwhile, Kana keeps wondering whether she should ask Kamigawa who that girl was. Later on, both of them start drinking heavily because neither has the courage to talk honestly. Then Sato brings up the fact that Kamigawa is Kana's subordinate. Kamigawa responds by saying that he doesn't want to stay her subordinate forever. Kana completely misunderstands what he means. Since she works so hard to be a good mentor, she bursts into tears, thinking Kamigawa doesn't appreciate her at all. Eventually, everyone calms down and Sato and Miho leave the two alone for a while. Unfortunately, we never get to see if they talk about anything important. At least Sato later clarifies that he was only joking and that Kana is just a good friend, leaving poor Kamigawa completely stunned after falling right into Sato's trap. Unfortunately, one day Kamigawa comes down with a bad fever, so Kana visits him after work. There she meets Yuki, Kamigawa's younger sister, who turns out to be the same girl from the other day. Kamigawa is pretty surprised to see Kana there, but he doesn't have much choice except letting her in. The two women cook something for him before looking through an old photo album full of childhood pictures. Seeing how comfortable her brother is around Kana, Yuki decides to help things along and leaves the two lovebirds alone. The downside is that Kamigawa quickly runs out of energy and has to go lie down. Things become unbelievably sweet when Kana starts singing him a lullaby. After he finally falls asleep, she instinctively takes his hand and eventually falls asleep beside him. A while later, they wake up at the same time, and Kana immediately apologizes. But when Kamigawa tells her he was able to sleep because she held his hand, Kana blurts out that she wants to get to know him better. And just like that, they agree to become real friends instead of just mentor and subordinate. From then on, they talk much more casually and constantly text each other. Meanwhile, Kamigawa's birthday is coming up, and Kana wants to throw him a small party. Together with their coworkers, they decide to organize a celebration for everyone whose birthday falls on that day. But Kana also wants to give him a personal gift. Without asking him directly, she discovers that he needs a pair of winter gloves. So the next day, she goes shopping for them with Sato's help. Eventually, the big day arrives. Kamigawa already knows about the party because Kana accidentally ruined the sign everyone was painting, and he ended up helping her fix it. What he definitely wasn't expecting was for Kana to buy him a gift of her own. He immediately puts on the gloves, and the two end up sharing a surprisingly romantic moment. Taking advantage of the situation, Kamigawa finally confesses that he wants them to be more than friends. Unfortunately, they're interrupted before he can finish his confession, so nothing really comes of it. As a result, Kana still isn't sure what she should do next. Thankfully, that's exactly what Miho is there for. Back at work, Kamigawa tries to apologize, worried that he made her uncomfortable. The atmosphere is awkward and even the rest of the office notices. Everyone is watching closely to see what happens. But Kana decides she doesn't care anymore and loudly announces in front of everyone that they should try dating for 3 months. Her friends congratulate her for finally expressing how she feels and tell her to enjoy those 3 months instead of trying to make everything perfect. When the weekend arrives, they finally go on their first official date. The two happily talk about the wonderful future that might be waiting for them. And that's how the anime ends, with our lovebirds walking hand in hand toward that future together.